What the Hell Did I Just Read? By David Wong. For context, this is technically a re-record / re-upload. For some reason, YouTube took down the prologue that I recorded years ago. So if this sounds different and honestly way better than the rest of this read-through, that's the reasoning. But regardless, here goes. You want to hear a story? Well, buckle the fuck up. Prologue. It rained like we were a splatter of bird shit God was trying to hose off his deck. The three of us ripped through the downpour in a beige 1996 Saturn coupe, me at the wheel. I squinted drunkenly into the rearview mirror and tried in vain to find the headlights of the black truck that was chasing us, but I actually wasn't sure if its drivers needed headlights to see or if they even had eyes. I also wasn't sure if it was a truck, or if it was black, or if we were being pursued at all. It was definitely raining, though. My friend John was in the passenger seat, and the only reason he wasn't driving was because, in addition to being drunk, he was wounded. Both of his hands were wrapped in the t-shirt he'd torn off to use as gauze. His wounds had not been inflicted by our pursuers, at least not directly. He had burned himself grabbing a fondue pot full of melted chocolate that we had been dipping fried chicken strips into. Try it sometime, seriously. My girlfriend Amy was in the back seat. She wasn't driving because she didn't know how, but she apparently did have enough experience to judge my performance, screaming warnings at me to keep my eyes on the road and watch out for that curve, and oh god, we're all gonna die. In Amy's right hand, her only hand, was a little gray metal container about the size of a shot glass. That container was what the occupants of the truck were after, and I had known this the moment they had burst into John's living room 10 minutes ago. We had just been minding our own business, eating our chocolate chicken and making our way through a theme movie night. We picked our 4 films, in which the ending is probably the main character's dying hallucination: Taxi Driver, Minority Report, The Shawshank Redemption, and Mrs. Doubtfire. In through the front door came this whirlwind of a half-dozen men, in black cloaks, all wearing what looked like rubber Halloween masks, drooping, expressionless faces with lifeless, skewed eyeballs. The lead cloak was wearing the mask of a puffy-cheeked infant and brandished a weapon that looked like a huge, electrified Toblerone bar, a series of black pyramids in a row, fed by cables that ran inside his robe. John's little Yorkshire Terrier was yapping its head off, probably asking the intruders to take him away to a better home. The quote-unquote man with the Toblerone gun had screamed, "Where is it?" in a voice like a spider that had learned to imitate human speech via some online courses it had taken. We hadn't had to ask what it was. John's house is my favorite place in the world, but there's nothing else in there you couldn't replace with a trip to Target or a garage sale held at a meth dealer's house. No, they had come for that little brushed steel vial Amy now held in her hand. They weren't getting it. So, John had grabbed the fondue pot and slung the molten contents at the thing with the spidery voice, inflicting hot brown splash damage on everyone in the room. Amy grabbed the vial from its hiding place, sitting in plain view on John's kitchen counter, next to a novelty ball shaped like a triathlon trophy, and we sprinted out the back door into a raging thunderstorm. We piled into my car, I floored it, and that's where we are now. The rain was blasting directly into the windshield, the drops whipping toward me like hyperdrive stars. Visibility was slightly worse than what you get inside a car wash after they spray on that multicolored foam. Amy was yelling turn-by-turn directions at me, and I was obeying, even though none of us had discussed where we were going. She ordered me to stop just as we arrived at a rusty bridge suspended over a roiling, swollen river. She threw open the rear door, sprinted out into the storm, and chucked the vial downstream as hard as she could. The angry, rumbling current swallowed it without so much as a plop. John and I ran to the rail and exchanged frantic "did that really just happen" glances. None of us spoke. A decision had been made, and could not be taken back. Amy had been right, of course, to do what she did. Goal number 1 was to keep the vial out of the hands of the cloaked things that were chasing us. And goal number 2 was to make sure they knew we no longer had it. Otherwise, they'd just strap us to chairs and try to torture its location out of us using some unspeakable method involving black magic and power tools. John said, "When they get here, let me do all the talking." I said, "Amy, when they get here, I want you to do all the talking. I'll be busy restraining John." Our pursuers, however, never arrived. I don't know how long we waited. leaning on the railing, watching the frothing current twisting and breaking below. Cold rain howled into our ears. John absently licked chocolate off his fingers. Amy shivered, her red hair matted against her skull so it looked like she was bleeding profusely from the scalp. Maybe they knew we had chucked the vial. Maybe they had never followed us at all. You're probably wondering who they are and who they work for, and those are both great questions. We climbed back into the car. John tied his wet hair into a ponytail, lit a cigarette, and said, "I fucking knew something like this was about to happen." Amy tried in vain to dry her glasses with her wet shirt and said, "Well, thanks for letting us know." I said, "If they dredge the river, they can find it." "It floats," replied Amy. "Did you see that current? River flows into the Ohio, that flows into the Mississippi, that drains into the Gulf of Mexico. They'll never find it, unless—" She trailed off, but we all knew what she had left unsaid. They would never find the vial, unless the contents wanted to be found. No ambush was waiting for us back at John's place. The strange, men-like shapes in their dark robes and Halloween masks were nowhere to be found. On that, or any of the following nights. We had spent the rest of the evening dealing with the dog, as we had come back and found it lapping up the chocolate on the carpet. It turns out chocolate is toxic to dogs. It started puking everywhere and we had to rush it to the vet. Or that's how I remember it anyway.